Hello dear friends, Kalidas here to offer some astrological thoughts for this week. Last week I was talking about Yogananda's statement that the path to God was through the nervous system, and that had to do with our chakras and the energy centers in our spine. And I focused on the medulla, the center of the moon, and mentioned how the planets, as we know them, they correlate to these centers in you. So the anatomy in our zodiac is the anatomy of yourself. And we spoke about the medulla being the moon, the center of ego, and the sun being the spiritual eye, the center of the soul or intuition. But what about the rest of the nervous system, the rest of the zodiac? First chakra, we have Saturn. And this is where we get our deepest tests in life. That first chakra is a cave that holds energy that we call kundalini. And the kundalini will rise when we act in accordance with our highest spiritual self. And the kundalini will become compounded and stuck and frozen the more we act in selfishness. And our tests in life, they invite us to rise out of selfishness and into a state of compassion. So for Saturn, the first chakra, the most important thing that we can do is open the heart in compassion. And you'll see in your own life that when the tests that really humble you, when they come to you, they'll leave you more feeling for the woes and sorrows and pains of other people. They'll leave you more compassionate. And people who carry a lot of religious pride in all that they've done, all the rules they've followed, and checks that they've got on their little religious checklist, they tend to lack compassion because they look at the world and they say, well, all those people are suffering. Well, that's because they didn't check off their little religious checklist of following all the rules. Well, that's a much more major flaw, as opposed to the regular person just trying their best, somebody who thinks that they've already succeeded or something. That's what makes our tests very hard. And a great teacher in my life was Brother Ananda Moy, and he once told me that he saw pride in a young man's eyes that showed great spiritual promise, and he knew when he saw that pride that this boy was going to have a very tough life. And he ended up being drafted into the army, and his life went in a completely different direction than the spiritual promise that they perceived in him as a young boy. And Brother Ananda Moy said it's going to be tough to get that pride out of him. And that's why it's so dangerous. It's such a hard thing to grind out of us, and it needs to be done through Saturn, our first chakra. And it's because we're holding on to some vision of ourselves, grandiose, imaginative vision, and when really, just like everybody else, we're struggling, and we're here in this world with Rahu and Ketu blinding us of our natural soul perception. So you're just as afflicted as anyone else, no matter what spiritual rules you've followed. And when we meet with our tests with humility, this makes them easier. Babaji said the quality most pleasing to God is humility. And why would that be? Perhaps that it's because God can help us more when we're humble. Perhaps it's because God really loves us and wants us to live in that state that's receptive to Him. And perhaps it's that God Himself is very compassionate and humble. And if we want to feel His presence within, we too must learn these qualities. So Saturn gives us a lot of humility and compassion. And if you want to really face into Saturn today in your tests, if you really want to feel a sense of surrender, then use Saturn's mantra. Don't do it if you're not ready for it. But some days when I'm really being tested, this mantra can be a great help in the surrender of those last little threads that I'm holding on to of my ego attachment. The Saturn mantra is, or one of them is, Om Shri Shani Shwaraya Swaha. And you imagine your first chakra opening without resistance, like a flower in the sun. It's offering its what's been stuck. It's allowing it to rise. This is Kundalini awakening. And when you allow your most difficult tests, when you don't fear them, when you invite them even, through Saturn's mantra is a good way, your Kundalini will begin to break open and you will experience more insight, spiritual power, and courage in your life. And that is the result of having opened that first center, the Kunda, or the cave that hides the Lini, the energy that is your soul perception, and it's become bound by fear and attachment. So the second chakra coming up is Jupiter, and this is where we get our creative life force and intuitive, creative insight into how to work through life's challenges and how to accomplish our goals. And Jupiter is related to the Guru. So the Guru and your second chakra, you might think, are different or are separated or aren't compatible, because second chakra gets such a sexual connotation. But that's your life force, your creative energy. And sexuality, of course, yes, it depletes that life force and creative energy when done out of balance. But what about when you entrust your life force and creative energy to a God-enlightened master and say, use my existence in this world to bless humanity? Well, then Jupiter, the second chakra, can rise and open us to creative intelligence that can bless this world. And what is the Guru's intention through you, if not to send enlightening energy into this creation so badly in need? If you think the Guru's only purpose is to free you and leave all these people behind, you won't find salvation. You're here to help people, and therefore your life force is needed. And the transmutation of the sexual energy into higher creative works. What is the most commonly created thing? Children. Because sexuality is so attractive. But it doesn't get us very far into our creative artistry in a fulfilling way. Besides that, we get to raise a child. It's a huge creative dharma. But if you want to be an artist or a writer or a musician, that second chakra being offered to your guru, that will bless your creative surge. And now the mantra for Jupiter is Om Brahm Brihaspatiye Namaha. And again, opening the second chakra like a lotus flower. It's sending its rays of creative insight upward in you. And you can use a deep inhalation to guide this, because the energy moves upward when we inhale. The third chakra is Mars, where the battlefield of Kurukshetra is happening. And we will either rise into love with passionate faith in God's power of love, or we will descend passionately towards Saturn with our attachment and our blind viewpoint that only this is the way it can work, the way that it works out best for me and my perspective. And that's Mars meeting Saturn. And Mars and Saturn creates warfare. Almost every war we've seen in history has begun when Saturn and Mars were in contact with each other. Passion, attachment. But what about taking that passion upward? This is what the yogi learns to do. You take that third chakra and rise into the heart with all your courage. This is what Arjuna was coached to do by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the story of the Mahabharata. Om Kum Kujaye Namaha. That is the third chakra rising mantra. And Kuja is a powerful word. So if you already have a lot of power in your nature and punch, then don't use the Mars mantra unless you're definitely feeling your heart chakra. Because if you use Mars mantra and there's still attachment, it may increase that attachment, that passionate attachment. It may make you want to fight that much more, when your solution may be in relaxing in love and releasing whatever it is you're holding on to. Om Kum Kujaye Namaha. The Mars mantra is for people who lack initiative. It's for people who are passive and afraid to act according to what they feel guided to act, in a way that they feel guided to act. So passive people, people who have Pisces dominant planets, they can benefit from the Mars mantra because it can get them acting. As Swamiji Kriyananda, he said, at a certain point when discussing the options, any action is better than more speaking about it, short of utter lunacy. He made that caveat there. So he said, any action short of utter lunacy is better than, at a certain point, than continuing to discuss the options. This is lack of Mars, is being just discussing but not pulling any triggers, not moving any energy. So those are the first three chakras, and then we have the heart chakra, which begins to open us to the higher perception. And this is Venus. Everyone loves love. Everyone loves sweetness. Everyone loves harmony and good times. And this is Venus, the heart chakra. But what it can also feel is the deepest pain. As we know, relationships open the heart, but they can also wound the heart, so that we close it and say, no more loving for me, it hurts to love. And that's us trying to hide back in the cave. We're creating a new attachment, one of hiding from this world. And it causes the heart to close, and all your spiritual faculties will thus be hidden from you. How do we open the heart? The mantra for the heart is for Chakra, the beautiful goddess who produces all the beauty you've ever seen in creation. Om Chum Chukraye Namaha. That is your heart chakra opening. And from this heart chakra, we release ourself. This is where love becomes pure, when we let go of what we're holding on to and live for love and pray that love flow through us. Om Chum Chukraye Namaha, the opening of the lotus of the heart. And then Mercury, the throat chakra, which is our calmness is needed for our communication and our learning capacity to be at its highest. The throat chakra functions best when we are in a calm state. Om Bum Buddhaye Namaha, the Buddha mind, the spotless mental sky, as Yogananda's poem Samadhi describes the Buddha mind, the Samadhi state. It means there's no thoughts of past or future polluting your presence of God within you. And Mercury mantra, Om Bum Buddhaye Namaha, can help us vibrate into that calm, receptive state where we can communicate well and we can learn new things. And then the last two, the medulla, the moon, and the spiritual eye, the sun, the luminaries in your brain, they work together. The moon is how you receive and put out the perceptions that you get from the sunlight of God's presence within you. So let me say that more simply. The moon is the ego. It's what you use to share God's inspiration, the sun, which is your soul. The moon mantra, which is great for peace, for a really busy day, real chaotic, the moon mantra can help us to feel that full moon within. Imagine the full moon in the sky, perfectly shaped And that's you when you're in complete trust in God. And the mantra is Om Som Somaye Namaha. Om Som Somaye Namaha. Soma, it's the nectar of the gods, the peace of the heart when not attached to anything in this temporal world. It's the bliss of the soul when it begins to bubble up, when our only love is for the eternal and we are not bound here in the fragile, temporary, material suffering realm. And lastly, the mantra for the sun. If you know the Gayatri mantra, that's a great one to use. But you can also use the Surya mantra. Om Sum Suryaye Namaha. And this is inviting the light of spirit, the light of the sun to reflect off our moon, to warm our moon, to be absorbed into our egoic nature so that we shine with divinity in our daily interactions. Om Sum Suryaye Namaha. The other mantra for the spiritual eye is Gayatri mantra, and we'll end today with that mantra. Om Bhurbuva Swaha. Om Tatsavitur Varaniyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. And this Prachodayat, it's a release of the self. It's a release of the moon shadow, of the care of the self, with complete trust in Savitur, the goddess, the God within the sun, the divinity, manifesting as the sun in our material realm. She assists with new life and assists with liberation. So childbirth, it's a great time to use Gayatri mantra or a mantra for the sun. And also, when we are approaching the end of our incarnation, to combine the Gayatri mantra with the Mahamrityunjaya mantra is a great recipe for Sanskrit illumination. What I mean by that is that Sanskrit is the alphabet, the original one, that's formed from your chakra sounds. They make 50 sounds in total, and there's 50 Sanskrit sounds in the alphabet. So what you're doing when you use Sanskrit mantra is you're tapping into a code of your most ancient being. Your origin it's formed in a certain pattern. And when you use Sanskrit mantras, you are tapping a specific pattern to awaken a divinity within yourself. It's not that we're reaching to Surya up there or Soma in the moon. It's in you. And when you use the Sanskrit mantra, you awaken that divinity. And so it becomes a very powerful practice, that of Sanskrit mantra, to augment your normal spiritual practices with. It can be like chanting, which Yogananda said is half the battle to liberation, is learning to chant devotionally. So Sanskrit adds a layer of vibrational intelligence that the ancient seers perceived within our chakras, and we can enter that high state of consciousness through the use of Sanskrit. It's a very beautiful technique to work with your nervous system, which Yogananda told us, of course, is the path to God. And as the planets cycle in the zodiac, and as the sun moves, we evolve. But inwardly, we can speed this process up. The path to God is through your nervous system. Calmness, love, mantra, devotion. All of these things can help us. But most of all, I'd say it's your love and prayers, your love for others, your love for the God in them, and your prayers to be a channel for God's love to them. And that is what will help us work with our own nervous systems. We need God's help. As I've said before, I'm stupid without you, Spirit. I need your guidance. And each day as we work another millimeter towards our higher self, we are not let down when we remember to live with love and prayer. So God bless you. Thank you for watching this. I appreciate you very much. Jai Ma.